I'll never forget the look on my daughter Emma's face when she opened her grandmother's gift. The excitement in her bright blue eyes dimmed as she stared at the contents, a box filled with garden soil, crowned with a cruel note that read, "This is what you deserve. My name is Olivia," and watching my 10-year-old daughter's birthday party turn into a stage for my mother-in-law, Margaret's cruelty made my blood boil. But I have learned over the years that sometimes the best revenge isn't immediate, it's perfectly planned. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Margaret's sugary voice cut through the silence. "I thought you loved playing in the dirt, just like your mother." She shot me a pointed look, referencing my work as a community garden coordinator. Emma's lower lip trembled, but she held her head high, a gesture that made my heart swell with pride. "Thank you, Grandma," she said softly, placing the box aside. My husband Tom's grip on my shoulder tightened, his jaw clenched. The other parents at the party shifted uncomfortably, while the children clustered around Emma, their innocent confusion evident. My sister-in-law, Amanda, Margaret's golden child, smirked from her perch on the couch. "Mom," Tom started, his voice strained, but Margaret waved him off. "Oh, don't be so sensitive. It's just a little joke. Besides, Emma needs to learn that she can't expect special treatment just because it's her birthday." Margaret's words dripped with the same venom I'd endured for the past 12 years. You see, Margaret had never approved of me. I wasn't from the right family, didn't have the right career, and worst of all, I'd stolen her precious son from the future she'd planned for him. When Emma was born, I'd hoped things would change. Instead, Margaret's disdain simply extended to include our daughter. But what Margaret didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Emma and I had been working on something special for the past 6 months. Something that would change everything. I caught Emma's eye and gave her our secret signal. A tiny wink that meant trust me. She straightened her shoulders, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Well," I said, standing up, "why don't we move on to the cake?" Emma helped to design it herself. As I walked to the kitchen, I heard Margaret's stage whisper to Amanda. "Probably some homemade disaster. You know how Olivia insists on doing everything herself instead of buying proper things like normal people." I smiled to myself, remembering the seed catalog Emma and I had been poring over last night, planning her next project. Margaret had no idea that her joke gift would become part of something beautiful. The party continued, with Emma's friends successfully distracting her from the incident. They played games, ate cake, and opened other presents, normal gifts, filled with love and thought. Through it all, Margaret sat like a queen on her throne, making little comments about how simple the party was compared to the extravagant affairs she used to throw for Amanda. After the last guest left, Emma helped me clean up, her usual chatter subdued. "Mom," she said finally, "why does Grandma hate us so much?" I pulled her into a hug, breathing in the sweet scent of her shampoo. "She doesn't hate us, sweetie. She just doesn't understand us. But sometimes, when people are mean, the best response is to grow something beautiful from it." Emma's eyes lit up with understanding. "Like our secret project." Exactly like our secret project. I glanced at the box of dirt, still sitting where Emma had placed it. "And you know what? I think your grandmother just gave us exactly what we needed for the final piece." That evening, after Emma went to bed, Tom and I had a long talk. He'd been trying to mediate between his mother and us for years, always caught in the middle. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice heavy with guilt. "I never thought she'd do something like this to Emma." I took his hand, squeezing it gently. "It's not your fault, but maybe it's time we showed your mother exactly what we're capable of growing." 2 weeks later, we invited the entire family over for a special dinner. Margaret arrived last, naturally, making a grand entrance with Amanda in tow. "I hope this isn't another one of your homegrown meals," she said, air quoting with her perfectly manicured fingers. "Actually," I replied, maintaining my composure, "Emma has something she'd like to show everyone. Especially you, Margaret." Emma appeared from the garden, holding a beautifully wrapped package. Her eyes shone with excitement and something else. The quiet confidence of someone who knows they're about to change everything. What happened next would shake Margaret's perfectly ordered world to its core. But as I watched Emma approach her grandmother with that package, I knew that sometimes the best way to handle cruelty is to nurture something unexpected, something that can bloom even in the darkest soil. Little did Margaret know, she was about to learn that the dirt she'd given as an insult would become the foundation of a transformation none of us could have predicted. Emma held out the package to Margaret, who took it with obvious reluctance. "What's this?" she asked, eyeing the beautiful wrapping paper decorated with hand-painted flowers. "Open it, Grandma," Emma said softly. "We used the dirt you gave me to help make it." The room fell silent as Margaret carefully unwrapped the gift. Inside was a handmade photo album, but unlike any photo album she'd ever seen. The cover was embedded with dried flowers and herbs, all grown from the soil she'd given Emma as a cruel joke. But it was what was inside that made Margaret's hands begin to shake. The first page showed a black and white photo, one I found in Tom's old family albums. It was Margaret as a young girl, kneeling in her mother's garden, her face bright with joy as she held up a freshly picked tomato. Beside it was a photo of Emma in our community garden, striking the exact same pose. Where did you get this?" Margaret whispered, her perfectly composed facade cracking slightly. "Dad helped us find it," Emma explained. "Mom said you used to love gardening with your mom, just like I love gardening with her." Margaret's fingers trembled as she turned the pages. Each spread showed parallel moments, Margaret's childhood memories mirrored by similar photos of Emma, playing in the sprinklers, making flower crowns, selling vegetables at market stands. The similarities were striking, undeniable. Amanda leaned over her mother's shoulder, her usual smirk fading as she saw the careful detail we'd put into each page. "Is that Grandma's old garden?" she asked, pointing to one of the vintage photos. "Yes," Tom said, speaking up. "Remember how Mom used to tell us stories about helping Grandma Helen grow prize-winning roses? Emma's been growing the same variety in our garden, from seeds Mom's mother saved." Margaret's head snapped up. "That's impossible. Those roses died with my mother." I shook my head, gesturing toward our backyard. "Would you like to see them?" Without waiting for an answer, Emma took her grandmother's hand and led her through the French doors to our garden. There, in full bloom, were Helen's prized roses, their distinctive pink and white petals exactly as Margaret remembered them. "But how?" Margaret's voice cracked. "We found the seed packets in that old trunk you gave Dad last year," Emma explained. "Mom helped me learn how to grow them, just like great-grandma Helen taught you." Margaret stood frozen, staring at the roses. I could see the memories washing over her. Memories of warm summer days, of dirty hands and proud smiles, of a mother's patient teaching. All the things she'd buried beneath years of social climbing and perfect appearances. "There's more," Emma said, turning to a section near the back of the album. These pages showed something different. Newspaper clippings about the community garden where I worked, specifically about our program teaching children to grow their own food. And there was Margaret again, this time in a yellowed article from 40 years ago, standing proudly beside her mother at a community garden fundraiser. "You kept this?" Margaret asked Tom, her finger tracing the old newsprint. "Of course I did, Mom. It was one of the few times I remember seeing you truly happy." Amanda shifted uncomfortably, perhaps seeing for the first time a side of her mother she'd never known. The little girl who found joy in simple things, who didn't need designer labels or social status to feel worthy. Emma flipped to the final page, where we pressed flowers from every plant we'd grown using the soil from Margaret's gift. Marigolds, zinnias, herbs, and of course, rose petals from Helen's heritage roses. "See, Grandma," Emma said, her voice full of innocence and hope. "Your gift wasn't mean at all. It helped us grow all these beautiful things, just like you used to do." Margaret's perfectly applied mascara began to run as tears formed in her eyes. She looked at the dirt under Emma's fingernails, so similar to how her own hands used to look after a day in the garden with her mother. For the first time, she seemed to truly see her granddaughter, not as some imperfect extension of her disapproval of me, but as a reflection of her own childhood joy. The silence in the garden was broken only by the gentle buzzing of bees among the flowers. We all stood there, watching as years of carefully constructed walls began to crumble around Margaret, brought down not by confrontation or anger, but by the simple power of shared memories and growing things. What happened next would change our family forever. But as I watched Margaret reach out to touch one of Helen's roses, I knew we'd already planted the seeds of something extraordinary. Margaret's perfectly manicured hand trembled as she touched the rose petal, a single tear rolling down her cheek. Then something extraordinary happened. She slipped off her expensive heels and stepped barefoot into the garden soil. "Mom?" Amanda's voice held a note of shock I'd never heard before. "Your grandmother," Margaret began, her voice thick with emotion. Used to say you could never truly understand a garden unless you felt the earth beneath your feet. She looked at Emma, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. Would you? Would you show me what else you've grown? Emma's face lit up like a sunrise. She took her grandmother's hand, leading her through the garden beds we carefully tended together. These tomatoes are from great-grandma Helen's seeds too, she explained, pointing to the heavy vines. And look, the herbs we used to press into the album cover are growing right here. As I watched them, Tom slipped his arm around my waist. You planned this all along, didn't you? He whispered. I smiled, remembering the moment I'd discovered those old photos and seed packets. Sometimes people just need to be reminded of who they used to be. For the next hour, Emma proudly showed Margaret every plant, every flower, every carefully tended bed. Margaret listened intently, occasionally sharing memories of her own childhood garden. Her perfect hair became slightly disheveled, her designer outfit dusty. But for once, she didn't seem to care. You know, Margaret said finally, turning to me, my mother would have loved this garden. She always said the best things in life couldn't be bought. She paused, struggling with words that clearly didn't come easily. I forgot that somewhere along the way. I forgot a lot of things. Amanda had been unusually quiet, watching this transformation with wide eyes. Now she stepped forward hesitantly. Mom, I never knew about any of this, about you and Grandma Helen's garden. No, you wouldn't have. Margaret replied softly. I was so busy trying to give you everything I thought was important. I forgot to give you the things that actually were. That evening, as we sat around our patio table enjoying a meal made with vegetables from our garden, Margaret shared stories we'd never heard before. Stories of summer afternoons spent shelling peas with her mother, of winning ribbons at the county fair for their roses, of the simple joy of watching seeds sprout into life. Emma, she said suddenly, setting down her fork, would you be willing to teach me how to garden again? It's been so long, and clearly you've learned all the secrets I forgot. Emma beamed. Really? We could make it a special project, just us. And Mom could help too, she added, looking at me hopefully. I'd like that, Margaret said, meeting my eyes. The hardness that had always been there was gone, replaced by something softer, more genuine. If you're willing, Olivia. Of course, I replied, feeling the last bits of tension between us begin to melt away. We could start next weekend. The fall planting season is just beginning. Perfect timing for roses, Margaret and Emma said simultaneously, then laughed in surprise at their shared knowledge. Over the next few months, our weekend gardening sessions became a family tradition. Margaret traded her designer gardening gloves for practical ones, and gradually, the woman who had once given my daughter a box of dirt as an insult began to reappear. The one who had once found joy in simple things, in growing and nurturing life. Amanda started joining us too, bringing her own children to learn about the family legacy of gardening. Our harvest dinners became weekly events, filled with laughter, stories, and food we'd grown ourselves. A year later, at Emma's 11th birthday party, Margaret arrived with a very special gift, Helen's old gardening journal, filled with handwritten notes, pressed flowers, and generations of wisdom. I think it's time this was passed on, she said, hugging Emma tightly. You're the one who reminded me what it means to grow something beautiful. As I watched them together, I thought about how the cruelest gift had somehow sprouted into the most beautiful blessing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about helping someone remember who they were always meant to be. Emma and Margaret now spend every Saturday morning in the garden, sharing secrets and stories, their hands dirty, their hearts full. The roses continue to bloom, a living testament to the power of growth and forgiveness. And that box of dirt, we kept it, displayed prominently in our garden shed. Not as a reminder of hurt, but as proof that even from the darkest soil, something beautiful can grow if you just know how to nurture it. Sometimes at sunset, I watch them together, grandmother and granddaughter, tending their garden, building new memories, and I'm reminded that the most powerful way to overcome cruelty is not with more cruelty, but with patience, understanding, and the willingness to help something beautiful grow. After all, that's what gardeners do best. We take what we're given, no matter how humble, and transform it into something extraordinary. And in our family's case, we didn't just grow flowers, we grew healing, understanding, and love.